This past weekend was the playtest for the new free-to-play shooter Shatterline, which is developed by FragLab. While this wasn't a game I had heard much about prior to the playtest, clips of the game intrigued me enough to try it out, and honestly, it turned out better than I had expected, especially compared to the plethora of free-to-play games that sometimes end up on Steam. Obviously though, the game is not perfect, and you do have to wonder, like many other games sort of in this realm, if it'll be able to truly carve out its own space in the genre and, continue to thrive. Though Shatterline does seem equipped to be able to do this if they're able to deliver on the promise of this playtest and continue to improve the game once it goes into early access later this week on September 8th. For many wondering what is Shatterline, well, to boil it down to the most basic answer, it's like if you took Black Ops 4, made it free to play, and then added on a roguelike PvE mode that loosely connects to the PvP through unlocks and progression. Before we hop in too deep to the nitty-gritty of the game though, I do want to talk a little bit about the developer FragLab, who before playing this game I knew absolutely nothing about. In research though, it actually seems to be a pretty decent sized studio, and according to this article on wargamer.com, actually sports about 125 employees and is based in Kyiv, Ukraine, which obviously poses its own issues today. The team was composed of developers who had previously worked on other shooters like Crysis, Battlefield 2, and then most recently Warface, which is another free-to-play FPS that sort of occupies that same space in the genre, and even today still sports a player base of over 1,000 players on a regular basis. From this, it does seem like the new studio would be equipped to tackle creating a free-to-play first-person shooter, but the question is, can they deliver on it? One issue I did see for FragLabs though is that due to the ongoing war in their home country, Shatterline has had to move forward without a publisher, which I imagine is going to hurt the game on the marketing front. However, it is worth noting that almost off of word of mouth alone, the playtest for the game did peak at 7,000 players, something I imagine they could build on once they go into early access. Now that we know some of the background behind the developers, I think it's time we dive into the game itself and talk about Shatterline. Before we get into the video though, let's talk about today's video sponsor, Yahaha Studio. So Yahaha is a brand new user-generated content creation platform for 3D multiplayer interactive experiences. Using it, anyone can create and publish their own virtual experiences. The cool thing too is that no coding experience is needed. You can simply use the components and smart assets in Yahaha Studio to make your dream games. It's also pretty cool because it comes with a built-in library with millions of ready-to-use 3D assets. These are stored in the cloud drive so they can be real-time streamed to the local client when you need to use them. And also they have one-click publishing to their cross-platform player app, so that when your work is done, you can easily publish your creation to the Yahaha cross-platform app, both on mobile and PC, and this is where other players can discover your work and join to play. So make sure to click the link below and join Yahaha's early access now for free. Like I mentioned in the intro, this was a game that I knew nothing about prior to this weekend, which is when I saw people on Twitter posting clips that ended up intriguing me to try out the game, and I am happy I did because Shatterline provides a style of gameplay that most FPS games on the market today are not offering, and that is a combination of arcadey Call of Duty style gunplay with character abilities you'd get from a class-based shooter, a la Black Ops 4 like I mentioned at the top of the video. One major change though from Black Ops 4 to this game is that unlike Black Ops 4, which focused on that 5v5 gameplay and had a higher time to kill than the average Call of Duty, Shatterline's PvP is your more standard 6v6 with a time to kill much more similar to your average Call of Duty game. A combination I think both helps the game at times but also hurts it at others. Along with the PvP of this game, there is also the PvE section of the game titled Expeditions, which is their 3-player co-op roguelike PvE experience. In my opinion though, this is the much weaker side of the game, and we'll get into that soon once we do a deeper dive into the PvE. These two modes, the PvP and the PvE, are loosely connected through your somewhat standard progression system where you can level up characters, making them stronger as you go through various passives that are going to upgrade your abilities or lower cooldowns, along with the standard weapon and attachment unlocks that you would find in a Call of Duty game. Shatterline also has character customization and skins that you can unlock through its battle pass as you level up. One thing that Shatterline does that I really do not like though is the blueprint system. You can unlock these blueprints either by leveling up the battle pass or by playing the expeditions. These blueprints can be combined to craft craft a modification, which is literally just one of the base weapons in the game, but stronger. This is something I'm not a fan of at all, because while in the playtest this was unlocked purely through in-game time only, I imagine in early access or the full release, you're probably going to be able to just go ahead and buy these and instantly have better weapons than other players who do not want to buy them. The annoying part too is that it's all random, so even if you have your eye on a certain SMG or assault rifle modification, you may end up just getting a bunch of mods for the pistol or the shotgun. It's literally like opening a loot box that offers power for the different weapons, and it feels very mobile game-esque and is by far, in my opinion, the weakest portion of this game. Focusing on the PvP, the gameplay though is pretty straightforward. You have the 8 characters all with their own abilities and ultimates, and then you have the standard collection of different assault rifles, SMGs, snipers, shotguns, and pistols that you would expect out of a game like this. Any character can select any of the weapons, so you're not locked into using a certain class of weapon, and as you use them you can unlock additional attachments. On top of that, as you level up, you unlock newer and higher tier weapons that you can use in the same class, like different assault rifles or different SMGs, and along with this system is the weapon modification system that you unlock through those blueprints, and I'm not a fan of. Movement and gunplay feel very similar to a modern Call of Duty game, with that arcadey shooting and movement accompanied by a nice slide that you can use to try and dodge shots or just traverse around the map a little bit quicker. One really weird thing though about Shatterline is sprint in this game is just automatic, and your character will begin to sprint after holding forward for a little bit of time. I found this pretty off-putting at first, and it's something that I still wasn't a huge fan of even after putting in some hours. There is also no prone in Shatterline, though I found that much less of an issue than the auto sprint. For game modes, the playtest offered 4 modes: Conquest, which was very similar to King of the Hill, Escort, which was basically Payload, Team Deathmatch, and Free-for-all. Overall, the modes are pretty standard, though I do think this is the first time I've played Payload in a Call of Duty style game, and unfortunately I think it ended up being the weakest game mode in Shatterline. It may have been the single map that the game mode was played on in the playtest, but it ended up feeling very samey from game to game, as the map had very little route diversity, and you mostly just ran down this long windy road with one tunnel you could go through to try and flank. Many of the matches ended up stalling out pretty early, as that road is very open and the defending team could just sit there and pick you off, and if they pushed up could camp the spawn pretty easily. On top of this, I'm just not sure that the time to kill of a game like this lends well to the style of gameplay that you would expect out of a Payload style game mode. When I think of Payload, I obviously think of something like TF2 or Overwatch, and you're going to spend a lot more time interacting with the other characters using abilities than you do in a game like Shatterline, where you really can just kind of mow someone down pretty quickly, even though you do have the different classes. I'm hoping that maybe with more maps, this game mode ends up feeling a little bit better, but like I said, currently, definitely the weakest game mode in my opinion. The other 3 game modes are all pretty standard, and I don't have much to say on those other than that they seem fine. Nothing amazing, but nothing bad either, and that's pretty much the same feedback I would give toward the maps, outside of that one escort map that I didn't find very good. One thing that Shatterline does different than your average Call of Duty game when it comes to maps is that all of the maps have routes that are blocked off to certain classes of character. There's basically 2 types of these obstacles: climbing obstacles, which can only be climbed by the recon class characters, and then there's doors that have to be broken down, which can only be broken down by certain characters. Although unlike the climbing obstacles, once these doors are broken down, anyone can traverse through them. While in theory this would add unique gameplay to the different classes on each of the maps, overall I find it hurts the flow of the overall gameplay and the map design, as portions of the map will just end up completely unplayable to you if you're not playing a certain character. Speaking of the characters, Shatterline currently has 8 different characters that fit into a variety of different roles. All of the characters have their 2 unique abilities and then an ultimate ability that you charge up, which usually is a pretty strong weapon or ability that you can use to get some kills. For the classes, you have the trooper characters, which are supposed to be your more standard fighters, I imagine. Mongoose falls into this role, and his abilities are literally a frag and a smoke grenade with a grenade launcher for an ultimate, which is about as basic as it gets. The other trooper though, Orbit, is a bit more unique, and while I didn't get the chance to play him personally, he does have an ability where he just gains a bunch of armor, making him a lot harder to kill. Both of the trooper characters get a passive where they have increased health regeneration compared to the other classes of characters. Then you have the support characters, which are obviously built around supporting your teammates through abilities that help heal or revive your teammates. One important thing to note here is that while the support characters are there to help heal you, you do just regen your health naturally by not taking any damage, so at times they can feel a little bit unnecessary. Another perk of this class is that when you res someone, they come back at full health instead of missing some health, but any of the characters in the game can res a downed player. The res mechanic's also pretty interesting because outside of Escort, where you might be pushed up pretty far from spawn, it doesn't seem super helpful. Don't get me wrong, you will find the occasional time where your teammate dies right in front of you and you just wiped a couple people and it makes sense to res them, but for the most part in the more standard modes, it seemed that most people would just hit respawn before you even had the opportunity to try and res them. I did find Pill's ability though here pretty useful, as he has a drone which can actually res down allies on its own, and it even drops a smoke on them so they can get up and hopefully not just instantly die. You can also use the drone to res yourself if you drop it and then end up dying next to it, which is just a sort of nifty interaction. Next is the EXO characters, which have the ability to kick down those doors we talked about earlier, along with usually a mixture of offensive and defensive abilities. EXO characters also have an EXO sprint ability, which allows them to sprint even faster for a short period of time. After this, you have the recon characters, which are the ones that are going to have the grappling hook that allows them to access those spots that require climbing. Both of the characters that fall into this role are actually pretty decent, as you can use them to get into a good vantage spot to either snipe if you want to do that, or just pick people off with an AR. Brissa, who is one of the recon characters, even has an ult that is just a super strong sniper that you can use, and one of her abilities allows you to go invisible, so she can be a lot of fun to play. The other recon character, his abilities are pretty meh, but he does have a revolver as his ultimate that's a one-shot kill, so that's pretty fun to use, but his standard abilities are pretty underwhelming. This pretty much wraps up the characters. Overall, none of the characters really have designs that stand out in terms of aesthetics, as while they obviously look a little bit different, we aren't talking Overwatch or Valorant levels of character design here. Some of the abilities are pretty underwhelming, but overall, outside of the ultimates, none of the abilities seem too strong, though you will die to those ultimate abilities a lot because many of the characters just have very strong weapons that they pull out as an ult. Luckily, you just respawn back into action, so it doesn't feel too terrible, but a single well-timed and aimed ult from various characters can wipe a full squad, which can feel pretty terrible if you're on the receiving end, but can be pretty dang fun if you're the one doing it. Overall, I found the PvP a pretty good time. Not perfect by any means and in definite need of some more game modes and maps, but if you enjoy class-based shooters or you enjoyed Black Ops 4, you will probably enjoy the PvP in Shatterline. Now, the PvE to me is where the game is a bit more of a letdown, though I'm hoping it gets fleshed out more as the game goes on. Expeditions, as they are called, are a 3-person co-op roguelike experience where you attempt to complete various objectives to unlock increasing amounts of loot. The more objectives you complete, the harder it gets, but the more rewards you are going to get. You do have the option to extract after completing each of the different objectives, or you can continue on to try and do more. But the catch is that if you end up all dying, your rewards are going to be halved. The idea of the PvE is pretty cool, but for the most part, you just end up fighting enemies with honestly pretty bad AI, though the objective fights do get a bit more interesting than the standard enemies that you're going to fight in between those objectives. Here is where you're going to fight a variety of different boss style fights, though I'm not sure how many different ones there are. I would imagine you start hitting the same ones pretty quickly, though in the bit I played of the PvE, each of the times I did an objective, it was something new. As you go through the expeditions, you'll find supply drops, which are going to give you the option to upgrade your character in a variety of ways, whether it's abilities, passives, or even possibly just a better weapon. This can be pretty fun at times since it can fulfill that power of fantasy, especially if you've already been a fan of roguelikes. One downside to this mode to me though was just the overall design of the map was pretty boring, and you end up doing a ton of running in between objectives, which just isn't honestly very fun. The objectives aren't bad per se, but rather underdeveloped, so there is potential in this mode, but currently as it sits today, it is definitely the weaker portion of the game. Currently, I find its best use is just to farm blueprints to get all those OP guns for PvP. This is pretty much the extent of Shatterline though. They do have an event that changes from day to day, ranging from a PvE co-op event to something like a PvP playlist with modifiers, maybe something like a hardcore TDM or something like that, which offers nice variety, but nothing super special, at least from what was available on the playtest days when I jumped in there to take a look. Overall, I enjoyed my time in Shatterline, and I do plan to play it later this week once it releases, though I do have to wonder how long it'll retain a player base with so many more polished and complete options on the market. The one plus side is there aren't nearly as many respawn-based shooters today as there were in the past, so there might be a little bit more room for Shatterline to breathe while Frag Labs improves and adds to the game. So would I recommend Shatterline? I would, and the fact that it's free to play makes that a very easy recommendation, as there is no barrier to entry. Whether it's a game you pick up and try with some friends for a single night, or it's a game you end up really enjoying, I would say that Shatterline is at least worth a try. And that is going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, just like usual, you know what to do. Let me know in the comments if there's any video topics or games you want me to check out for future videos. Other than that, follow me over on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, all those good places, and I'll see you all next time.